and it is exactly 9 o'clock. Focus. Welcome. Your Women's Fund, once a month, gathers here together with you and because of you to focus all of us on the expertise of people who can show us what we need to know and what we can do to support women and girls right here at home. We act locally, we think globally. We have an illustrious array of attendees today, a huge response to today's topic. So I want to thank especially a lot of the community partners who are here, government representatives. We have, I believe, 9 or 10 different government representatives here, from our county to Miami Beach, city of Miami, and I think there are 5 or 6 other counties as well. All the folks who do all the work day in and day out of our community partners, you know who you are. Please introduce yourselves and communicate in the chat. This is your village square. This is your network. And please take what you take out of today back to your networks. This illustrious board of these incredibly powerful, this first slide is women, but now let me welcome our 4 board members on the bottom, our newest board members who just joined the board. They'll have their first meeting in February. John Bitterman, I know you're here. Thank you so much. Miriam Altman-Ray's already very, very involved in her Women's Fund here. Welcome, Miriam. Nancy Ankrum, I see you're in the house, and thank you for saying hello to everybody on the chat. Cannot tell you how thrilled we are to be working with you, as we are with you, Michelle Kaba, who just spoke on one of our Impact Collaboratives as a speaker very, very recently. So welcome to our 4 new board members. You fuel our mission, as do all of you who attend here, and our donors fuel this mission because, you know, we work hard and we care and we don't ask for much, but we do need to fuel the mission. So whether it's a $5 or $10 donation because you like this Impact Collaborative, or you could be a grand mission sponsor or buy a big, huge sponsorship at Power of the Purse on April 26th, we thank you for fueling our mission as well. So this specific mission of this Impact Collaborative of our Freedom from Violence pillar is supported day in and day out by the Carrie Meek Foundation. We thank Lucia Davis-Rayford and her entire team for all they do in our community and for being a partner with us. This is the current public awareness campaign that Your Women's Fund has with the Carrie Meek Foundation. This is about gun safety, about asking, we can protect our children, and it is our responsibility too. Everything else is not responsible. Thank you for taking these messages through us, and thanks to Ballyhoo for giving us these amazing floating billboards is a PSA public service. So we thank you, we thank you, we thank you, and we see you. I said Power of the Purse. I'm going to say it again. Who doesn't want to be with all the people you're with today and about 900 more? April 26th, downtown Miami at the Hilton. Please sponsor generously, or get somebody who is your banker or is your supporter in another way to let them in on the big secret that this is the place to be at our luncheon on Friday, April 26th. Please join us. Okay, on we go. We have incredible people here, and I know Amanda Altman, Christy House, all these folks are interested in the data that we are collecting here. Viviana, please share the latest.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Viviana. I'm the Senior Research and Policy Manager here at the Women's Fund, and I'm going to be presenting our Gender Equity Index, especially our Freedom from Violence score. Our score for 2021 was 56 points, which means that Miami-Dade County is 44 points away from reaching equity in freedom from violence. We did this through analyzing specific metrics, such as you can see here, sexual violence, domestic violence. And what these represent are proportions, the proportion of women versus men that are victims of these crimes. The data provided for sexual violence and domestic violence comes from Miami-Dade County Police Departments, City of Miami, and Miami Beach. So there's still a little couple pieces missing, but we're working on collecting those. Next slide, Gami, please. As you might have seen on our social media, we have what are called our Data Mondays, and where we present some of the data that we've collected. And the last Monday, we presented this graph on human trafficking, which shows the proportion of victims that are female versus male. And this data is actually provided by the state attorney's office. Thank you so much to them for providing this for us. If you want more information or to follow us on social media, you could have clicked on that past QR code, but no problem. Search us up. We're all over the place. And then if you want to know more about our Freedom from Violence pillar, on all of the research that we've collected for the Gender Equity Index, feel free to scan the QR code. It'll lead you right to our Freedom from Violence, our gender equity page, where you'll see all of the policy papers. And last but not least, we will be releasing the 2024 Gender Equity Index the coming March 7th as part of our March Impact Collaborative. So I hope to see you all there.
Data makes us visible, and Viviana helps us all feel smart. So if you follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn, you'll get Data Mondays, and you will know what's going on with women and girls in your community. So thanks to Viviana and the entire team, including board members who volunteer and other community members who volunteer on our research committee. Data is making women and girls stronger here by making them visible. And on we go. I want to thank Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, our state attorney, for retaining Brenda Mezick close to us. I can't believe you never escaped us, Brenda. Your service over all of these years. We thank you for all you do, and that includes setting the framework for our conversation today. Welcome and thank you.
Oh, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am Brenda Mezick, and I am the director of our Human Trafficking Unit at the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office. I'm also the supervisor for our Human Trafficking Task Force, our attorney supervisor. I'm joined with our commander, Danny Mascara, who is obviously our law enforcement supervisor. I just want to share just a quick shout out so that you can also be proud of the work that we have done. Very quickly, I know that you probably have all heard the story that we began our unit, the very first specialized human trafficking unit in the state of Florida in a state prosecution office, one of the few in the entire nation, in November of 2012. And at the time, we had 3 human trafficking cases that had been filed under the former statute. We had 0 labor cases. Today, sitting here today, this morning, I am so terribly pleased and proud to share with you that we have helped over 1,155 victims, 3 just yesterday. We have filed 851 human trafficking or human trafficking related cases. So on behalf of Ms. Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, she is incredibly committed to combating human trafficking, and this is a tremendous success story that is our community and reflects the incredibly hard work of so many of our partners in the community who have helped us with this success and building our legal infrastructure and our services infrastructure. So I want to thank you for all the work that everyone here has been doing. And that includes all our private attorneys who've been helping out with human trafficking expungement. I also want to thank you very much for your service and your pro bono work there. But let's get to our program. And there's 3 points that I want to share with you before I turn you over to our wonderful panelists. But I did want to share with you 3 trends that we are seeing in our human trafficking task force and unit. And the first one I want to share with you isn't so much new as it's increasing with intentionality. And that is the targeting of women who have infants or small children. So obviously we know that women have had a disproportionate, responsibility for the caring of children since time immemorial. And we have always had, matter of fact, our very, very first trial that we ever did as a unit was involving a woman whose child she had with her trafficker, and the child was being held hostage while she worked and brought in a certain quota. That was our very, very first case. And sadly,
not recognized.
sorry, that's Alexa. Sadly, this has been increasing in 2023 with alarming rate. And we have heard feedback that they are actually targeting, they know what they're doing. They're looking for women, and they're bringing these women from other parts of the country. They're luring them in. Miami itself plays like a character role in this story, because they're using Miami and the glamorization of Miami on Instagram, on other social media profiles, as this luxury destination place to be, that if they can just get here, their life will be magical, right? And they're enticed to bring their children, that there'll be a place for them. And of course, once they're here, their entire story changes up, and they find themselves. We actually have on videotape the experience of one woman who is in a hotel room with the bottom, and her child is in a car with the person she realizes is the pimp, who's holding her. And unfortunately, this was an undercover operation, but you could see just the anguish on her face as she's realizing, I'm trapped. How do I get out of this situation? Secondly, what we're also seeing is this Renaissance glamorization of the female gangster, of the female pimp. And I want to differentiate this from women who have sort of collectivized together to sort of help each other on the streets, to women who are presenting themselves and see themselves and promoting themselves as actual pimps, actual female pimps. And this can be very, very seductive to women who are out there in sex work, because as you know, it's very easy to get in and it's very hard to get out of the life. And unfortunately, they're being lured in with this sort of kind of feeling that they'll be protected, that it'll be a different world. And of course, it never really is. It never really is. Not when, you know, the power dynamics is always pimp and prostitute. When they're presenting that dynamic, that is a total power differential, and it's never what they think it is. The third thing that I want to share with you, and this isn't so much a trend as what we have all been missing to no fault of our own. We just didn't understand the science and the neuroscience. And that is CTE and our intimate partner victims and our human trafficking victims. So let me step back. Everybody, I'm sure at this point, is aware. We've seen it very much popularized. Chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I was at a panel of medical personnel, and they sort of patted me on the back and said, close enough. So I'm still not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but CTE, we all know that is a degenerate brain disease that's caused by brain injuries, you know, concussions and other brain injuries. So just to give you some feedback, in 2015, the NFL settled a lawsuit for NFL football players who were experiencing CTE dementia, right? And since 2015, there's been a payout of $1.2 billion to 1,600 former players and their families. And this is an ongoing situation. I think Boston University specialists did a CTE study of former NFL players. In their study, 91% had CTE. So this is, in fact, very serious. And as you know, it will cause dementia. The signs, it can only be fully diagnosed after death, but the signs that you will see will be dementia signs, and there'll be memory loss, and there'll be confusion, and there'll be aggression and mood swings. Those players have protective gear. Those players wear protective gear. Our human trafficking victims and our intimate partner victims, the victims of domestic violence, and of course, as you know, human trafficking and domestic violence are other sides of the same coin. They don't wear protective gear. They don't have protective gear. So as you can understand from this type of exploitation, the victim is product. So you're not looking to necessarily damage the face. So you have a very high incidence of head injuries to the head, not to the face. the smashing of the head into the walls and the choking to the asphyxiation of these victims to unconsciousness. So their brains are being deprived of oxygen. This is being looked at now, but there is hardly any real research. And I am so thrilled to share with you that we just unveiled last week the fact that we are now in partnership, our office, our Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office, and Dr. Krause from the University of Miami in a study, a voluntary study of our intimate partner victims and our human trafficking victims regarding the incidence of blows and asphyxiation incidents, so that we can start to begin to look at the data, and from there hopefully build, begin and launching this research is the first, getting the incidents, getting the numbers, getting some kind of sense of that. And then from there, the hope is that we will be able to change medical assessments for all of this category of victimization. And the further hope is that there will be funding for these adult victims who are maybe 2 decades away from knowing that this has happened to them, from injuries that they've sustained in childhood, injuries they've sustained, as adults. I think I can tell you from my own experience as a task force and human trafficking prosecutor, we've had, I can tell you the officers who have come in and say, yeah, I think there's something kind of wrong with her. She's like, like how a boxer sort of has that kind of loopy kind of, kind of confused state. She sort of talks like that, right? We've had victims who have come in and said, wait a minute, I have to take notes because I can't remember. I've had personally a homicide. It ended up being not competent to withstand trial, but it was a woman who had stabbed. She was very young. I think she was 51. I was much younger at the time. I was really the age of her adult children. And she had stabbed to death her husband. She was diagnosed with dementia. The forensic psychologist said, Brenda, she's never, it's degenerative. She's never going to get better. She'll never be prosecuted. She was never going to stand trial. And we closed it to manslaughter. And then of course she was found not competent. But in looking back, and her adult children were very candid. They said, our mother has been beaten by our father her entire life. And she was very young to have dementia. And unfortunately, we just didn't have the science. We just didn't have the understanding to really understand what's been happening with these victims. I think we've been seeing them. I think we've been seeing them all along, and we just didn't know. And of course, more powerfully, more problematically, they do not know what's happening to their own bodies and their own minds. So I want to, because I know that we have some very, very powerful people who can be change makers on this and to help with, with this awareness campaign regarding this. But this is something that has been unseen and right in front of our eyes for decades. And we need to really serve our victim population better on this. And we are hopefully starting a new chapter and doing exactly that. So I want to turn you over at this point. I will get back to you, and there'll be time for questions afterwards, and I look forward to that. But I do want to turn you over to our esteemed panelists, and I want to thank you again for all the hard work that you're doing in behalf of our victims and this fight against human trafficking.
Stronger together, indeed. Nobody does it alone. And the 3 next leaders are going to really help us to understand more of what's going on and what we can do. Please participate in the polls, stay awake, stay lively. There are resources that are being published in the chat. Networks make us stronger. We are weaving a stronger Miami-Dade for women and girls and beyond. So please participate. And I'm going to ask our first wonderful panelist to do the impossible in less than 2 minutes. Please, Dr. Beatriz, introduce yourself in context of today's topic.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria, and everybody for this opportunity to be here. Thank you to Brenda for the exceptional works and the exceptional panelists as well to be here. It's a pleasure. My name is Dr. Beatriz Susana Uetz. the founder and director of Human Trafficking Front, and also the author of Sex Trafficking of Children Online, Modern Slavery in Cyberspace. It's a pleasure to be here today to increase awareness and education and our advocacy efforts to combat and prevent online recruitment. At Human Trafficking Front, we provide education and training nationwide to prevent human trafficking and online child sexual exploitation. Our goal is that victims are appropriately identified, perpetrators are effectively investigated, and as a community, we can reduce risk and minimize vulnerabilities that traffickers use to induce people to exploitation. So thank you for this opportunity and our efforts together to combat online recruitment as part of the human trafficking chain. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor, and thank you, Special Agent Kimberly Jeanette, for being with us today. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? Okay,
Perfect.
great. Awesome. Thank you guys for having me. My name is Kimberly Jeanette. I'm a special agent with the FBI. I've been with the FBI since 2010. I specifically have been working crimes against children and human trafficking with a major focus on the human trafficking side of the house since 2021. But prior to the Bureau, I also investigated independently for the court children who had been abused or neglected and removed from their homes. So I've kind of been working in this field for getting close to 15, 20 years now.
Thank you so much, Special Agent. Many of you in the audience here today are also part of the South Florida Human Trafficking Task Force or the Miami-Dade Human Trafficking Coalition or others. We are indeed stronger together, and we thank you, Special Agent, for being with us. And Shay, we thank you so much for your leadership and Americans for Immigrant Justice. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining. It's an honor to be here. I'm the Executive Director at Americans for Immigrant Justice, where we work every day to support individuals who have survived human trafficking in getting away from their trafficking situations and having the independence to live safe, successfully right here in Florida. We work with trafficking victims in lots of different circumstances. So to give you some ideas about that, we work with unaccompanied children who are detained by the Office of Refugee Resettlement right here in South Florida in a number of shelters. We work with youth who are in the foster care system who have been identified as victims of human trafficking. And we work really closely with federal, state, and local partners who every day are referring survivors of human trafficking and domestic violence to our Office for Immigration Legal Services. And what does that mean? Why do immigration legal services matter? Well, we find time and time again that our clients are afraid to come forward and ask for the help that we know that our law enforcement partners can provide, because they fear that they will suffer consequences based upon their immigration status, that they can't leave a home of violence or leave their trafficker because if they call the police, they might be arrested and deported. And that prevents many people from being able to leave their circumstances and find safety and freedom. So we concretely stand beside those survivors, help them testify against their abusers or traffickers in court, help them secure things like work authorization and a visa so that they can be stable and safe and access services here right in our backyard.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to ask each of our panelists to focus us for 3 minutes on what you are seeing. What is happening in the streets and in your areas of expertise that we can know about and share?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maria. I will proceed sharing our insights with our presentation. One moment, I will share my screen, please.
Good to go, Doctor?
1 second.
Okay.
I think now, yes, thank you. So what we have seen in relation to the online recruitment, especially we pay attention to minors, the challenges and the strategies that is here in these first 3 minutes, is this. We see that the internet has revolutionized the way how traffickers recruit victims, especially minors, who are particularly vulnerable for human trafficking. Even though we know that trafficking methods or traditional methods still continue, the internet have allowed to traffickers to increase access to a larger number of potential victims. And that is a key point on this, especially to child victims. And that increased the risks and the dangers for them. And now they are executing tactics remotely. As we see in this data, this is a global issue. According to the United Nations Office on Drug and Crimes, in the report that they released, half of victims for human trafficking were recruited online. Nationally, we see that this is also a big issue for us, and locally as well. We see major platforms misused for these purposes. In terms of minors, for example, to be more specifically, we see that 57% in trafficking cases, the minor were recruited online. And overall, when victims in the US, 40% of US victims were recruited online. So we see how this problem is a big issue for us, and our efforts are essential. We see also that sex traffickers, for example, are increasing social media presence, online platforms, and grooming interaction, how that can lead to the recruitment. Traffickers are getting information of minors, whatever they post on their life or themselves, and then like, comment, build trust, often as peers, as I share in this screen, and build a relationship with them to groom and recruit. The impact of what we see is that they are taking advantage of the vulnerabilities, especially of minors. Vulnerabilities can be of any kind: physically, psychologically, emotionally, family-related, economic vulnerabilities that they may have for the recruitment into commercial sexual exploitation. We see that they take advantage of the position of vulnerability of each child that they have by being a child by themselves in their childhood to induce compliance. In this way, they may promise or give presents, money, or any other type of benefits related to the method of control that we are seeing now increase related to online recruitment. We see, for example, the lover boy method that continue to be on the rise. For example, they create a false sense of intimacy, of attachment, and that is to induce compliance and also instill fear on the victims. And therefore, psychological coercion is a formidable means to exercise control over minors and victims in general. According globally to the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime, there are 2 main strategies that they are using: hunting and fishing strategies. Hunting strategy, in simple words, is when the trafficker contacts the victims, instead of fishing strategy that is passive, when they respond to an act that, for example, that is being placed by the traffickers. If you ask about which of 2 strategies are more prevalent now, are now the fishing ones, the passive, that they are being, victims are usually contacting the traffickers, and that relate or connect also with the vulnerabilities of the victims. The challenges, after presenting the problems that we see, include here, just to mention few of the main ones. End-to-end encryption communications are a higher risk for online recruitment, because that also presents a lower risk for immediate detection of online recruitment. And that is a big concern, especially in terms of prosecution, identification of both minors or victims and perpetrators. We see, for example, here that in these cases, the investigators or law enforcement will need to have a court order often to be able to decrypt communications, be able to access to those communications or evidence to start an investigation. And usually here, as I mentioned in the slide, the data retention period vary in different platforms. That is also a concern. And for example, in cases of WhatsApp, it's just 40 days. So they, in other words, they will need to act very fast in order to get evidence for a legal case. In WhatsApp, as I mentioned, for example, another thing that we see is that they require an age to start 16 years old, but they don't have an age verification mechanism. So kids who are 16 to 18 may be in greater risk. However, at the same time, since the age verification mechanism is weak or lacking, minors below 16 can also get easy access to these platforms. And again, connected to trafficking offline, children, especially who live in poverty, foster care, struggling with addiction, trauma, are especially vulnerable. We see also enforcement challenges as part of the response legally, talking. The applicability of the law vary among different jurisdictions, and that is also a concern in terms of enforcement. We need also crucial international cooperation and coordination is also a must, especially that many of these perpetrators may be located in a different jurisdiction or country, and victims may be here. So this also point out to the need of a global response to tackle effectively online recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Special Agent, will you please give us some insights on what you're seeing at the FBI?
I will stop sharing. Okay.
Sure. I would say that we're seeing a lot of what the doctor just kind of gave us, the same things that she just mentioned. We get a lot of phone calls from our local partners, and they're calling us regarding a lot of the group homes, kids who've been, pulled out of foster care and everything like that. So I wanted to focus on minor human trafficking as well, although we could spend all day on adults and how they're being brought into the country or trafficked online the same way with some nuances. But I am going to focus mostly on minors. So you can start on the next slide, Camila. So some of the things that we're seeing, especially young girls who are hanging out with neighborhood boys who've already been recruited, just some signs for everyone to sort of look out for are the tattoos and the branding. We like to warn our gang units, anyone who's working in the drug sector. So if they find girls hanging out in some of these areas, a lot of them will have either the same tattoo or similar tattoos. They may be anything from roses to dollar signs, crowns. A lot of times they have the pimp's name tattooed on them, and they get them in a lot of the same areas on their body: arms, hands, unfortunately their necks, and then they're, kind of stuck with these branded symbols on them for the rest of their lives. And in a few slides, you're going to see some of the other things that we see on social media, dollar signs and things of that nature that are also being used as tattoos. So you can go to the next slide. The doctor definitely hit on the recruitment online. That has been our major issue, is the same thing with retention of records. Snapchat only holds them for 90 days. If nothing is saved, we lose all of those messages. We lose all of the pictures sent back and forth. Any of the, selling of a minor victim to a friend or somebody else through these same platforms, we lose it all very quickly. Same thing with WhatsApp, TikTok, everything that is going to disappear. So if we don't have a victim who comes forward right away, we unfortunately have a very hard time finding those records. Even if we do get a victim's phone, which we have a lot of tools where we can get data from a phone, even if it has been deleted. A lot of times with these applications, we still run into those same problems where they're just gone. So unfortunately, gathering that evidence makes it's extremely hard to gather. You can go to the next slide. So some of the things to look for online, there are a couple things circled. Obviously, they're using ages in their profiles that are not correct. I've blurred out her face, but just by looking at this girl's profile, um, when her face was visible, she's not 21. She doesn't look 21. There's nothing about her that screams she's an adult. But if you look below, the second thing circled is the peer-to-peer and the dollar sign. This is something that you will see on profiles, either that or links to something like an OnlyFans page where they've either already been recruited or they're working themselves and they're lying about their ages. And then they are soliciting dates and money through these peer-to-peer chats. This was from like a Match profile, I believe. So some of the language used, and you can see this underneath the profile details, you'll see things like roses and dollar signs. You'll see this on ads on Mega Personals as well. Some of the information they may put in their profile are looking at things like licks, dates, using words like the bottom or wifey, talking about trading up. These are all things that may or may not appear in a profile. You'll see in the about info here they're talking about just being ready to pay for whatever date, hangout this may be. Just look at the profile name on this one, that Ho Key 21. She clearly was not 21. She doesn't look old enough. But they are using all kinds of sites, including dating websites, to find dates. We've had a lesser trend of them actually posting themselves on things like Skip the Games or Mega Personals, and we're seeing them solely move to social media to find dates. And you can go to the next page. So these are some of the other symbols I was talking about. The most often ones that we are seeing are the 304 life. Obviously 304, if you turn it around, looks like on a calculator, the word hoe. So hoe life. The number 16 is prevalent all of the time in a lot of social media things. P is the 16th letter of the alphabet. It's them calling themselves a pimp. The other two that I think are the ones that we see the most often are things that we were looking for during Formula One for people coming in and out of the AOR, our area, were the RHGO, the real hoeing going on, and the RPGO, real pimping going on. We were actually trying to crawl social media for those hashtags in conjunction with things like F1 Miami, Formula One, to see people who were trying to solicit either women or dates during that time. So I also already touched on the sex trafficking emojis, the capital P, anything with a crown, anything involving money, location data. There's some stuff on the left side. You'll see spelling out the word pimp, the snow bunny, or the princess, snow princess, things like that. The 304 again is huge. And then we have a lot of symbols that we see on ads themselves. Things like it looks like wet drops. You'll see those at the bottom. Diamonds and roses on a lot of ads. Generally speaking, when we see those, somebody has posted that ad for them. People don't know to put those things. And one of the things that is not on there that I think came up a lot for us when we were, kind of trolling ads looking for younger women who had been recruited were things like candy and lollipops. So those were things that symbolize them being young. So these are emojis and hashtags that we can share with everyone. Everyone can sort of kind of write these down and just keep an eye out. The ism one on the bottom left is shortened from pimpism. We haven't seen that a lot in Miami, but I thought it was interesting because they use it in Las Vegas a lot. And a lot of the girls that we've actually picked up with their traffickers have come from Vegas to Miami. Those big hubs that we see, they go from California to Vegas, they come across the country to Miami because we're such a big area and it's a lifestyle. So they like to travel to and from certain areas, and Miami being just one of the main ones. And I think that might be my last slide.
Well, we'll back to you in the next session about what we can do about it. Shay, what are you seeing, please?
I'm going to start with a story about a young person that I had the chance to represent named Dawn. And Adan was a young person who I met when he was 12 years old at the US-Mexico border. He was actually detained by the federal government. And what we learned as he was seeking release to his stepfather was that his stepfather was in fact a known sex offender. And we worked really closely with Adan to learn more about the relationship that he had with this person, but he would continue to repeat that this was a person who he loved, who he wanted to be with, and who he trusted. We ended up conducting an international home study in Adan's country of origin in Honduras, and learned that while Adan grew up, he was one of many children, and his mother was actually a sex worker. And as a sex worker, she had sold Adan to this person who he called his stepfather. And the stepfather paid for Adan's mother to have a refrigerator in their house, bought food for his siblings. And in fact, this alleged stepfather was the only person who had ever given Adan a birthday gift. So when Adan explained that he had love for this man, he really meant it, because the only care that he had received as a child primarily came from this person. Unfortunately, when Adan learned that he could not go and be released to live with this man who he considered his stepfather and called his stepfather, he asked the immigration judge to send him back to Honduras. And despite the fact that it was clear to government officials that Adan was a survivor of human trafficking, the immigration court system has no unique procedures for children, and Adan was promptly returned to Honduras, right back to where he started. What we knew at this time was that this man in the United States had actually coordinated sex tourism to Honduras, bringing rich and powerful people from countries all over the world to have sex with Adan on a small island off the coast of Honduras. And indeed, when our immigration court system returned Adan to that situation, this entire circumstance happened again. And Adan was subsequently trafficked back to the United States and ended up once again in federal custody. By this time, we knew exactly what was going on with Adan, and we knew that what we needed to do was build trust with him so that he knew that we could help him. Working really closely with law enforcement officials, Homeland Security investigations at the Department of Homeland Security, the child welfare system, we were able to intervene and help Adan find a path forward to safety. I share this story because even though the mechanisms that traffickers are using are consistently changing, what we see every single day is that the underlying realities that make human trafficking possible are the same. And there are two factors that you should know. First, that it's the vulnerabilities of individuals like Adan that make them more likely to be trafficked. We know that recent data shows that consistently one of the top 5 circumstances and vulnerabilities that leads someone into a sex trafficking or labor trafficking situation is the fact that they might be a recent arrival to the United States. And so this is just important to know that vulnerabilities like immigration status, like age, like LGBTQ status, like socioeconomic realities can lead someone to be in a circumstance of human trafficking, and also that there might be something that somebody is fleeing in their home country that leads them to decide to take a journey towards hope of a better future. The other thing that we know is that getting someone out of human trafficking requires really deep, profound trust in a care provider who can help them move forward and get away from a circumstance in which they are in danger. So I think these are kind of our key takeaways in terms of trends, that it comes right back to these very basic things: the vulnerability of the victim, and the trust that they have or don't have with somebody who can help them, and the need to make sure that that trust is more significant than the trust that they might have, if that trust exists, with the person who is taking advantage of and exploiting them. I wanted to share 2 more trends with you that I thought would be important to know. So very recently, the federal government has opened what the government has deemed a new lawful pathway to come to the United States. And this is a parole program that exists specifically for nationals from Cuba, Venezuela, Haiti, and Nicaragua. And under this new parole pathway, individuals are able to apply electronically with the support of a sponsor who's in the United States who agrees to receive them. And up to 30,000 people a month are able to fly to the United States and be paroled. contingent on the fact that they will be supported by and connected to and residing with their sponsor. It probably won't surprise many of you on the phone that the overwhelming majority of the 30,000 people a month who are coming in on this new parole program are arriving to South Florida, specifically the Miami International Airport and the airport in Fort Lauderdale. And we believe from our expertise that this new parole program in many ways actually makes it more difficult for people to be exploited and harmed as they cross our southern border. But we're also recognizing that this reality of somebody coming to reside with a sponsor, often who they have no relationship with, has created a space, a new opportunity for exploitation and harm. So as we're kind of moving forward in our region in South Florida and thinking about the needs of our community, this population is a population that's uniquely vulnerable. And that vulnerability stems from their concerns or their threats really from people who are taking advantage of them, that if they leave the situation that they're in, that law enforcement or immigration officials will be called. And so when you have somebody who comes in with sort of this obligation to remain with a particular person or even with a particular employer, like for example, in the circumstance of agricultural guest workers, that reality, that threat that law enforcement will be called serves as the reason that somebody doesn't leave and can't leave. So this is a new trend for us locally, and I will stop there.
Thank you so much. Time is flying. I knew it would. Dr. Beatriz, can you give us 1 or 2 minutes of calls to action, what we can do, so we can have a couple minutes for Q&A. Please take it away.
Thank you. I would like to discuss here as alternative solution a story, a real story that is from the United Nations Office on Drug and Crime. I also discuss in details, and we have the minute here. It's time, we have a short time. In that story, some recruiters, online recruiters, were able to recruit from Asia 500 girls and brought them to Europe for sex trafficking activities. And the girls never met the online recruiter in person, never knew who they were or how they were located. So what happened to that, in that case, we see how this problem touch also transnational bases and how the response need to be enforced for potential solution or alternative solutions globally and locally, because it's affecting everyone. First, we need to start recognizing the adaptability of human trafficking and how this crime is evolving alongside digital technologies, as I just mentioned in the case. We need a stricter enforcement. We need at the same time accountability of online recruiters. Many of them, they play a trafficking role, can be prosecutors in trafficking grounds, and many of them never, as in the example, in real life example that I shared that is in my book, they never get in contact with the victims and still are being part of the trafficking chain of that person. For that reason, for combating this issue, we need specific laws targeting online recruitment to ensure the protection of children from trafficking activities occurring online, to ensure the detection and investigation of recruitment in particular. We need a stricter national online child protection frameworks, especially or preferably harmonized at the international level. In that way, we can address the legal challenges brought by online and technology facilitated child sex trafficking. We need also that the governments, including our local governments, strengthen the capacity of law enforcement authorities with adequate trainings and resources to be able to investigate effectively all stages in a trafficking crime. And when I say all stages in a trafficking crime, this starts from recruitment and even before that, when the targeting of victims is being done online. In connection to that, is the need to improve coordination among executive departments, agencies, and offices nationwide and locally, because we need coordinated responses, such as this effort, what we are doing here, to increase coordinated responses locally when victims are being recruited online. We need at the same time, since this is a transnational crime, also a cyber crime issue, we need also to increase cross-border cooperation. And important here also, in addition to work with our partners, law enforcement partners internationally, is also the role of the electronic service providers. And I wanted to bring that specifically here because of the critical role that they play in order to prevent and address online recruitment of users. They need to do more in terms of robust scanning practices. They need to be able to detect effectively signs of human trafficking activities online, starting from grooming and also pornography crimes and other crimes, because all of them may be prior to the process of recruitment and part of the problem. In this way, it's important, it's essential for us in simple words that companies implement human rights due diligence policies and processes. And in that way, they can increase the response that they are providing right now that is proving to be ineffective. Our call to action, we need to continue working in our efforts as human trafficking front that we are doing in partnership and collaborations. We work with our partners since we start almost 5 years already, and before with my experience, to continue advocating for comprehensive child safety laws, to strengthen collaboration, understanding of the problem, sharing evidence-based insights effectively to counter trafficking and online child exploitation of children in connection
Thank
with
you so
recruitment.
much, Doctor. We're
Thank you.
really, we have to let our colleagues go because we have
Absolutely,
just
thank
minutes.
you, and we
You're
look
wonderful.
forward.
Special agent, please,
Thank
1 to 2
you.
minutes.
Sure, I'll be quick. I think the biggest thing for us is the collaboration piece. Stuff like this is definitely what is going to help us sort of learn what other what other people are in the community that can help us, because you guys hear from the victims in a different way than we do. Sometimes they don't want to come forward to law enforcement, but they may have gone to, Citrus, or they may be in the DCF system, willing to talk to people. And we need to really strengthen those relationships with everyone from our other law enforcement partners locally, and the other, especially the victim-centered approaches, the people who are seeing these girls and boys every day who've been recruited, who are leaving homes and, group homes and getting picked up on the street by God only knows who. And we've gotten those calls before. We've gone to some of those homes to try and speak with the people working there. We have attempted to have closer working relationships with our local partners so that they will call and get us involved right from the beginning. I think the earlier we can get involved and start doing what we can do from the investigative side, such as preserving records and making sure that we are, taking the cell phones and dumping them so we have that evidence right from the beginning. It's really just going to strengthen what we can do down the road. We do have our own victim services, but I think using the local partners is just going to help us even more, because you guys are more feet on the ground in the local communities, whereas we have a bigger area to cover, and we need those local contacts to get in touch with us, and so we can help from the federal side.
There's so much power in the network present today. Special agent, I have a true faith that a lot of great is going to come out of today. Shay,
Me
1
too.
minute, please.
I would encourage everyone on the call to try to translate what you're hearing today in your own knowledge and concerns about human trafficking into the general media rhetoric that you hear and the political rhetoric that you hear in relation to immigration. These issues are impossible to untangle, and they're not mutually exclusive. And so what I mean by that is that when you hear, for example, potential elected officials or others say, if you are an immigrant, I will find you and deport you. Listen to that message from the perspective of somebody who might be an immigrant and victim of human trafficking in that moment, right? If you think about it from that lens, it will give you a sense of how difficult it is for victims to step forward and for people to help them. We have to let all of the individuals who find themselves in these circumstances truly understand that our law enforcement providers and officers are positioned and want to help them. And sometimes that message, well, certainly that message gets confused in the rhetoric that we hear about immigration more broadly. I want to share kind of one more specific example. In my experience as an immigration lawyer, procedures, federal immigration procedures, are a real safety net for victims of human trafficking. So when we implement policies like Title 42 or other procedures where individuals crossing the border are immediately sent out of the country without any kind of interview process or questioning or moment in time when somebody says, do you want to be here? Do you feel safe? Were you forced to come here against your will? We lose the opportunity to do what we all want to do, which is eradicate human trafficking. Lastly, I just wanted to encourage you to consider how you can invest in care providers who are on the front lines and have the ability to help survivors and victims move forward, whether that's donating with your own dollars or encouraging government officials, our county and our state to invest in providers. It's a really meaningful support that we can provide those who are in these horrible circumstances so that they don't have to be there anymore.
Brenda, I'm dying for you to join us. I don't know, we can get a quick question or two in here. There was a question of, the first question was of the children who are being held hostage. Are they being held hostage so that their mothers can be exploited, or are they also exploiting those children? Who wants to take that? Brenda?
I can just tell you, in the cases that we've had, they have not, and I will say this from having worked cyber crime and child pornography, you will have infants and you will have toddlers that in fact will be exploited. In the cases that we've seen, that's not been the case, but the mothers are being coerced to do sex work that they didn't know that they were being enticed into Miami to do. So it's a control of the mother so far, but we know, and I've seen it, that these children can possibly be turned into the life as they get older. Yes.
Special Agent, anything to add to that?
No, I would just agree with what she said. If anything, I would say same. We also work the crimes against children side of it. We generally don't see the crossover between traffickers utilizing those children to make a profit off of either production or distribution of child pornography. It's usually sort of separated, but I could see as they get older and they're old enough to sort of join into the lifestyle that could happen.
Next question, if we have in 1 minute, any specific information that we think needs to go to, these Senate hearings, et cetera, about what specifics we're asking our elected officials to do vis-a-vis Meta and other internet providers? Brenda.
It's failed, it's come up and failed and come up and failed. And that is end-to-end encryption. And I understand privacy rights, but guys, if you're trying to protect children, law enforcement's inability to obtain data from these service providers because of end-to-end encryption is basically kind of recreating a Wild West on the internet. And it's 100% frustrating our ability to fight and protect and gather evidence. So not having a backdoor on that end-to-end encryption, I know this is a hotly debated issue, but it will hurt our ability to protect children.
Quickly, Dr. Beatriz, please.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with Brenda as well. I think in terms of human rights, as a human rights attorney that I am, end-to-end encryption is necessary. It's also part of our rights, of our civil rights. So it's important to have encrypted platforms. What is needed is the balanced approach in that way that we can accomplish child protections, child safety, but at the same time, continue with the respect of human rights and especially civil rights online. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here. Network, amazing. You know, we've had a really strong group of humans here today, and each and every one of you represents so many other networks and humans. And you are the people who show up. You are the people who use your voice. And so we thank you for being a part of your Women's Fund, whether you're showing up today, you're coming to an event, or if you want to join the amazing Camila Ustares who put this Impact Collaborative together, because she also works with our impact agents, our volunteers. Come and join us, same place, same time next month. Viviana will lead you through the incredible launch of our new Gender Equity Index data, making women and girls visible in our community, thus uplifting us all. We see you. We thank you for focusing us and look forward to having you together with us next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity, invitation, and amazing, extraordinary colleagues and dialogue today. Thank you so much.
You are each and all extraordinary. And this audience, I mean, really, really incredible. I'm moved by what I know is going to happen after today. You know, it never stops. It's not like we fix everything in one day, but we can make real progress when we come together. There's no question. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.